Hello.
Hello. How are
Hey.
you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good.
I'm trying to eat my lunch at the same time, so I
Oh,
may have to be shoveling food in my mouth.
no worries. You got to do it when you can.
We're on Eastern time. I don't know about you guys, but okay.
We're central, so it's a little before lunch for us. It works out well.
Okay. Like to think I could go without lunch, but that's not happening.
Yeah, totally fair. Right now.
And we've never done this honorarium before, so I'm gonna check with Megan. I don't know if we have to do something to get the check generated or how we do that, but I'll
Okay.
follow up with her after this and
Yeah,
see if we need to do anything for that.
sounds good. Um, it looks like I don't know if you're gonna do this later, but
Okay.
screen sharing isn't
Oh
on.
yeah, I can let you do that. Yeah, I
Okay.
think I never understand these settings, but let's see. I
I
know I can make you a co-host,
okay. Okay.
and then
Oh, yep.
becomes Mary, so I can make her co-host too.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
Seems good.
Oh, so it says, are you both co-hosts now? Or, yeah, I think you should both be.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
I was just explaining I'm going to be eating my lunch while we do this.
Totally fine.
And but you're both co-hosts, so you can share your screens.
Well,
We had 100 people sign up, so that's pretty
Wow,
cool. Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. And we're really trying to get more engaged with our members and offer them some programming. And so you're kind of the first of our group for a long time that's really done this. So thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a little brief intro I can give. I mean, like it's like 3 sentences, and then if you guys want to introduce yourselves,
Okay.
we can do that. And Mary, how do you say your last name?
Schiavone.
Schiavone. Okay.
Do you want me to put the phonetic in the chat for you? Would
Yeah,
that
that'd be
help?
helpful. Yeah, because my name is hard to say too. It's just there we go. That helps me. Yeah.
hmm No, I get it. People like to remix my name all the time.
Well, see, I
Um,
just always had people say my name wrong. It doesn't bother me, but I know there are people that really give it's very
Mhm.
important to them that you say the name right. And I get that. So,
how do you say your last name?
Barrend.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, okay. But then I was
Yeah.
questioning it. I was like, what if I and we do, so it might seem like we're jumping straight into the talk, but we do have some introduction stuff in the plan of the talk. So we will include that information just so you
Okay.
know. It's gonna
Yeah,
seem
I'm
like
just
we're
going to do
jumping
a
straight
quick
in.
welcome. Here we are, and then let you
Yeah.
guys take it. And I
Okay.
guess if you want to go till, I don't know if you're going to take questions, like, were you planning to go till like 12:45 or something? Well, I'm on Eastern time, so
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably be, it's been running around 45 to 50 minutes,
okay.
maybe a little longer, but there should definitely be time
Yeah.
for
And
questions.
there's not, if you go a little over, that's fine. We're just doing a
Okay.
brief, check-in meeting at the end if anybody wants to come to that. And so,
Okay.
okay.
Awesome.
Oh, you said 12:45 and I was like, that is a touch long because it's just coming up on 11 here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard. The time zones are tricky.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And if you want to practice showing your screen or anything, feel free to do that.
Yeah.
I'm just here to make sure it all worked.
Ev- Everybody makes it in, yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, we can see it.
Good.
Yes.
I'm just gonna.
Well,
I'm
those
gonna make sure I have that
reviews.
tab closed too, because we've
Oh,
got caught by that before.
all right. And then switching over still looks good.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
And I think people are just entering. I don't think I have to admit them, so people might just start
Okay.
showing up here.
Totally fine.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm gonna mute my chat.
Yeah, I need to I'm gonna close some tabs. Here we go.
since I'm eating, I'm going to go ahead and close my camera for a little bit. I'll come back, but I'm here. Well, and Mary and Tristan, do you want me to monitor the chat and kind of let you know as things come up, or do you prefer to do it yourself?
I will keep an eye on the chat. Tristan's gonna share her screens for the duration of the talk, and then I will keep an eye on it.
Okay.
Mhm. Thank you for checking though.
Okay, we're right at our start time. I'm going to start the recording. This is going to be placed on the ACRL YouTube channel, so you can check it out there as well. Let me go ahead and start that recording. I'm going to do a brief introduction, and then we'll let our guest take it away. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so it looks like we are recording. Okay, so welcome to the ACRL College Library Section open meeting. We're really excited to connect with our members. And so we really appreciate everybody that signed up and that you're here today. We're going to have a presentation by our guest speakers, Mary Elizabeth Schiavone, right? And Tristan Draper. And they're going to talk about careful and careful humanizing outreach through dynamic redesign. And then following the presentation, we're just going to have a brief business meeting. So if anybody wants to attend, please feel free to do that. You don't have to stay, but you are welcome. Okay, so after that difficult introduction, I'm going to turn it over to you guys to take over. All right, thanks.
Thank you. That was a great introduction. Okay, hi everyone, welcome. Today we're here to talk about our outreach and engagement strategy. And as Dawn mentioned, the title of our talk is Careful and Careful, Humanizing Outreach Through Dynamic Redesign. I'm Mary Schiavone and I use she, her, hers pronouns.
And I'm Tristan Draper, and I also use she, her, hers pronouns.
Quick note that the chat is open, and I will be keeping an eye on it, so feel free to throw any thoughts or questions in there as we're talking.
All right, to give you an overview of our discussion today, first we're going to start off with some background about Morse Library and Beloit College, where both Mary and I work. Then we're going to give you some more detailed introductions and discussion of who we are, and link this into this idea of humanized outreach that we'll be talking about later. We'll then give you kind of a definition and some things to think about with humanized outreach. And then we'll walk you through a case study of one of our favorite events that we do on campus through the library, and how we connect humanized outreach to that. And then at the end, we'll give you a few tips and tricks for where you can start with humanized outreach in your practice.
Okay, so as Tristan said, we are both at Beloit College. Beloit College is a small liberal arts college located in Beloit, Wisconsin, which is just north of the Illinois and Wisconsin border. Our full-time enrollment, or FTE, is about 1,000 students. 90% of these students live on campus, and they come from about 43 countries and 44 US states and territories. 14% of our students are international students, and 36% of our students are Pell eligible, which is a financial need marker. In addition to the library, we have 2 teaching museums on campus that are very integrated in the teaching, learning, and research initiatives and efforts on our campus. And we are also located on the ancestral territory of the Potawatomi, Peoria, Miami, Meskwaki, and Ho-Chunk people. And our student groups, clubs, and organizations, as well as museum staff, often work closely with the Ho-Chunk people to preserve effigy mounds that exist on and around Beloit's campus.
Right, and on campus, we have only one library, which is Colonel Robert H. Morse Library. We usually just refer to it as Morse Library because that's a mouthful. And housed in our library, we have a combined library and IT services department. In this department, we have 15 people. We have 5 full-time library staff, 2 student success and engagement librarians, who are Mary and myself. We also have a circulation desk coordinator, a collections access and acquisitions coordinator, and an archivist and special collections librarian. In addition to that, the LITS department also has 9 IT staff who manage databases, systems, and the campus network. We count our assistant director as IT staff because he mostly oversees IT staff. And we also count our chief information officer and library director as IT staff because that is where his background is. And then finally, we have one office manager who handles kind of budgeting and purchasing, a little bit of everything for all of us. So to give you some background on our building, it was partially renovated in 2023 and 2024, so all of last academic year, through a $9 million Wisconsin Neighborhood Investment Fund grant. As part of this renovation, which mostly just touched the first and second floor of the building and not the third, we had some new departments and offices and services added to the library building. So we now also house Impact Beloit and CareerWorks, which are two departments that help students find internships, find jobs. They offer career support if needed. We also now house Writing Works, which is our writing tutoring center on campus, which is mostly staffed by student tutors. And then, of course, LITS is also in the building. We also have to brag a little bit because we just found out that the library was ranked #1 for campus services on the HEADS Student Satisfaction Survey, which just went out recently. And this is a really great improvement from last year. We were at 75% student satisfaction, and we're now up to 95. And we think that this is in part due to a lot of these humanized outreach efforts that we're making.
Okay, so we thank you so much for the well wishes, congratulations, and applause. We appreciate it. So we're going to talk a little bit more about ourselves and our work, and then we'll talk about why we do this in just a second. So I'm Mary. My professional work and research tends to center around contextualizing government documents. In addition to being a student success and engagement librarian here at Beloit, I am also the federal depository coordinator. I also do a lot of work in finding the balance between formality and informality in academia, and I'm especially interested in approachability in academic libraries. And I'm also really into research ethics and the drama that surrounds that sometimes. So we have started a podcast together exploring these concepts. I'm going to talk you through some of the images here on my slide. So the top left corner is one of our Gov docs. In addition to being in charge of them here, I'm also a history nerd, so I've included my favorite here for you to witness. I also have a graphic of some earrings because I've recently gotten into making those myself. And then the bottom left corner are my 3 dogs, usually called my Chaos Gremlins. 95% of the time I say that lovingly. And that is Pandora, Harry, and Allie. And then on the top right here, I have a graphic for water polo. I played for a long time and I'm now currently a coach, and I'll be traveling to Greece with a couple teams at the end of this month. And goggles because I do swim on our campus as often as I can and often tell students they can say hi to me there. I also got really into making buttons in this role. And so here's one of my favorite designs I've made, the Cite Me with some things. And I'm into webcomics. So if anyone has any recommendations, I would love to hear about them. Please connect with me. And then I also have a sewing machine here because I've been sewing my whole life and I've recently decided to try making clothes. We're going to see how that goes.
All right. And hello again. I'm Tristan. I'm back. So a few of my research interests. I'm currently a part of the American Library Association Emerging Leaders Program, and as part of that, my group is looking at how MLIS, or Masters of Library and Information Science grad programs, are teaching about censorship, intellectual freedom, topics like that. Love to talk about that more if you have questions. Also, I like to look at how different types of games can be used in library orientations and library instruction to engage students and give them a different experience. So I've used Escape the Room games. I'm looking at using Dungeons and Dragons this upcoming semester, and more. And then finally, I've been looking at recently, how does instructional technology help or hurt student engagement in the classroom? And I'm trying to come up with a toolkit to help people assess whether instructional technology is supporting learning goals or not. And then a few other things about me outside of my professional interests. So in the upper left here, I have a Kapow graphic because I really love graphic novels. I'm reading a lot of LGBTQ+ novels right now, and that's been really fun. I also have a picture of my cat Hermes, who was named after the god because it looks like she has wings on her back, and Hestia, my dog. They're our pantheon, we say. They're holding on to a bookstore because I really like visiting indie bookstores, especially romance bookstores. Let me know if you have recommendations. And then I have some music notes because I really like musicals. I got to go to New York over the winter and I saw Six and Juliet there. It was amazing. Down here in kind of the middle, I have a badminton birdie. I've been a coach for about 10 years. I'm also the club advisor of Beloit Badminton on campus. And as a hobby, I help run the state high school badminton tournament in Illinois. It's a long story. And then in the bottom right, I have some knitting needles. I love knitting. I've knit for a long time. In the bottom left, I have a dragon because I love playing Dungeons and Dragons. That's new to me since moving to Beloit. I'm currently running Curse of Strahd with some people, which has been an experience. And then this last image, this opossum meme, is just because I love opossums. They're adorable and really interesting creatures.
Okay, so you might be wondering why we just told you a lot about ourselves. But we like using this example because it really demonstrates how we've sought to humanize our both ourselves and our work and have a little bit of fun while doing it. So we do some variation of this whenever we run, whether it's introduction, orientation sessions to the library, our own instruction, and events like this. It helps people just learn a little bit about us and give them something to talk about if they want to approach us after the session. So if you wanted to try doing this in your own practice, we have a few tips for you. So the biggest thing is try to include some kind of image or graphic. It does not need to be something of you or even something that you took. You could share things like what your research interests are, what your work is about, especially what services you and your team offer to patrons. You could also consider sharing something about your hobbies or crafts, a show you watched recently. If you are involved with a campus organization or club, you could talk about them. You could also mention any volunteering or community work that you have that could be tied to your patrons. And I think most importantly, think about what you're comfortable sharing and what is off limits. We shared a lot with you today. We're not always quite this robust when we share this with students. But we wanted to give you as many examples as we could, but we both still have interests and hobbies that we keep separate from our work so that we have a way to disconnect even when we're putting a lot of ourselves into our practice.
All right. So hopefully by now we've kind of piqued your interest and you want to learn a little bit more about what this humanized outreach piece means and what it could do for your practice. So to define this term for you, how we're thinking about it, we define humanized outreach as a practice in which we connect with our patrons through shared interests, experiences, and other means in order to show them our humanity, but also to acknowledge and support their humanity. So to put that simply, the goal of humanized outreach is to connect with our patrons as humans. So we've identified several ways to kind of start this process and to get it going, which you can see on this slide. However, I do want to highlight that this is not a step-by-step process. It's more of a cycle that you engage in. So starting on the left of the screen, we have our first point, which is find touch points for connection and continued collaboration. An example of this would be in my introduction, I often mention D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, and we have a huge D&D culture on campus. So I usually get at least a few students who perk up or seem excited when I mention it. In the past, this has led to really great connections. For example, one time a student asked if we had any D&D books in the library, and I was able to show them how to check out a book and talk them through that process. And then even later on, through that connection I had made, that student came back and scheduled some research appointments and got help on one of their papers that semester. At the bottom of the cycle, we have humanizing our practice. So this means thinking critically about how to find these points of connections, but also making sure that they fit within our time and energy and the resources that we have, right? We don't want this process to be exhausting or stressful. We really want to lean into what we're excited about and what students are excited about. So one example of this is Mary and I really like wearing silly earrings. Mary is wearing some interrobang earrings, so that's the exclamation point question mark. I'm wearing capybaras sitting on turtles. So this is just a tiny thing that brings us some joy in our day, but also it does make students come up to us and want to talk to us because they want to see what our earrings are today. And then finally, on the right side of this slide, we have assessing our services and engagement. So again, I want to stress this is an ongoing process, right? This is part of the cycle. We're doing this again and again and again. And assessment can look a lot of different ways. Okay, so it might be getting numbers for events, but it also might mean talking to students one-on-one or in small groups to see what's working for them, what they want to see more of on campus. It might mean sending out a feedback form after an event or doing a poll on social media. There's lots of options. All right, and then we have a quick interactive option for you if you want to take it. So Mary has put a URL in the chat, which goes to our Humanized Outreach Sandbox. And this is a place where you can kind of explore some of these ideas and play around with them on your own in this context of an introduction. So the sandbox will be available after the session if you don't want to go into it now. We're going to keep it up until around December 19th, and then we'll archive it, but it will still be available to look at. All right, so I'm going to show you what this looks like really quick and show you how to navigate it, because if you haven't used Figma before, it can be a little unwieldy. All right, so this is our Figma board, our Humanized Outreach Sandbox. Just a few quick tips. You will have to log into a Figma account to start editing. There should be an edit button at the bottom of the screen for you if you do have an account. If you don't, you can make a free account, and we would recommend requesting a free educator's account through Figma. All you have to do is send proof of instruction in your job, which could be a syllabus or a list of classes you're teaching. Okay, so to move around the board or drag it, you'll want to make sure you have the little hand cursor. In order to edit things, you'll want to use the arrow cursor and click on things. So starting in the bottom right-hand corner, there are some quick tips and helpful tools to help you navigate, edit, add stickers, add stamps, fun things like that. Moving to the left in the bottom left-hand corner, there is a box where you can share different resources. So again, feel free to click on a sticky note, add articles or ideas or fun things in there. You can also just add text using the bottom bar or add additional sticky notes. Moving up from that, in the top left-hand corner, we have an area where you can practice your own introductions. And we have a few examples of different types of introductions Mary and I have done. Again, feel free to click on a sticky note in this box, add in some graphics, add in some research interests, just practice formatting how you want your introduction to look. And then this final box we have on the right is for any questions, thoughts, or comments that you might have. Again, feel free to add sticky notes, add text, or edit an existing sticky note in that box. So we will leave this open. Feel free to play with it as we're going through our presentation, or just save it for later if you prefer that. All right, I'm going to go back to our slides now, but feel free to stay in there.
Yes, definitely feel free to hang out in there and continue to play around. It won't offend us if you're focused on that. The session is recorded, so you can always come back to anything you missed. But if you do want to focus on what we're doing, again, the sandbox will be open for edits through mid-December, and then you'll be able to reference it later on. Okay, we're going to change gears a little bit, and we're going to talk through the case study that we have for you today. And we are going to talk about an event that we do every semester called Night Against Procrastination, or NAP. Now, we know many schools, especially small schools, offer some kind of finals event similar to Night Against Procrastination. But we're going to talk you through some of the changes and updates that we've made to our own event offerings for students. So, as I said, this is an end of semester event. It usually offers things like snacks, support, and activities for students to participate in. We usually host it between the end of classes, the last day of classes, and the start of finals week. We call that a study day on our campus. It is our largest event of the semester, and it would not be possible without the sponsorship and collaboration of many other campus units that help us out. So some other units will help on the day of and volunteer their time or other resources. Others will just donate remainders of their budget to help us cover the cost of such a large event. It is the majority of our own LITS programming budget. So we have a few numbers for you here down at the bottom. Our LITS contribution to NAP is about $400 per year or about $200 per semester. And then for the whole event, the total NAP budget is approximately $2,000 per year or $1,000 per event and per semester.
And here you can see an example outline or timeline of what NAP usually looks like. So NAP started at Beloit College in around 2019, and it was started by the two previous student success and engagement librarians before Mary and I were here. Historically, the event was part of a week-long de-stress fest, so it kind of kicked off a week of snacks and de-stress activities at the library. But for us, this is typically what it looks like. We usually have tutoring available. The writing center will be there for a few hours from 7 to 10 because that's their normal working hours. Leads tutors, which that is our learning enrichment and disability services department, will usually be there all night, 7 p.m. to midnight. Mary and I are there all night offering library research help if students want it. And then we have an entrepreneurship department, Celeb, on campus that always sponsors some grab and go, like fun things for students to get, like fidgets and giveaways, which are available for as long as they last, usually not until midnight. And then we have our full food schedule, which might be one of the most popular parts of the event. So 7 to 8 p.m. we have crepes, which are made by our Global Experience Office. And then a little later at 8:30, we have pizza, veggies and fruit, and cake, which are sponsored by several different departments on campus, the President's Office, Campus Rec, the Powerhouse, the Advancement Office, the Provost's Office. And then once the pizza is gone, after a little time has passed, usually around 10 p.m., we'll put out some grab and go snack options sponsored by LITS, Res Life, Campus Rec, and the Powerhouse. Also for NAP, we always develop a theme and a corresponding turtle. The turtle is important to the history of the college and also the town. So it just makes sense for us to use a turtle. Okay, so we started, or I guess I should say I started hosting Night Against Procrastination in fall 2023. I started at Beloit in June of that year. And when I started, I was the only librarian. However, I did really want to make sure that we still hosted NAP because I had already heard some feedback from students, even just in August, that this was a great event and they really wanted it to keep going, even though there had been some staffing changes over the course of the summer. So I was really dedicated to it. But we also had some other barriers we were facing. So as you might remember, our building was being renovated during this time. So we were in a temporary location in the Powerhouse, which is kind of like our student union. It has a workout space and a field house and a pool and a game room. And the library was kind of tucked in the corner by the pool, taking up a little bit of space there. So that posed some unique challenges for us. There was definitely a lack of outlets. We ended up daisy chaining a bunch of extension cords together, which probably was not up to code, but we didn't start any fires. So we also didn't have any private study rooms, which was really hard for students in that semester because there weren't really lots of quiet places they could go to study. We also had the lights go off during the event, even though we told security we would be in there after hours. However, I think that added to the event. Students really seemed to like it for some reason, and we did eventually get the lights back on. And then because there were fewer staff to run this event, we did pull back on some of the de-stress activities and extras that the previous librarians used to have as part of the event. So we just had a sticker board where students could take stickers. We still did snacks for all the finals days, but on a much smaller scale. And then finally, the other change I made was having a feedback form. I did both a Google form and a print version so I could learn what students liked and didn't like about the event. And we didn't have a good way of counting people for this event, so we just used swipe-ins to the building, and we had 681, which seems like a great number. However, you have to take it with a grain of salt because this didn't count like unique swipe-ins per student. It was just any swipe-in. So there are definitely people who left and came back swiping in multiple times. And also just because there are so many other services in that building, we have a strong feeling that a lot of those people were going to use the other services.
Okay, so then I joined the team in January of 2024. And so I helped with the spring 2024 Night Against Procrastination. So the biggest change was that we had two whole librarians for this one. Um, and we were able to combine Tristan's experience more broadly in librarianship and also her experience running this event in the previous semester with my experience working in administrative support for student affairs in my role just previous to this one. So we put our heads together and we came up with a few different things to try, even though we were still in that same temporary space with its challenges. So we did introduce a sensory room in a classroom in the building, as well as a take it fidget table with the sponsorship of Celeb, who we mentioned before. We also figured out a way to ice drinks. We didn't have access to a fridge or anything, but we made it work because we found that students did not appreciate the warm soda of events past. And then we added a photo op with our library mascot, Torty, who you will see in just a couple slides. We also increased our social media leading up to the event to advertise and during the event. This actually led to the most popular video that we have on our socials. One of our student workers put together an advertisement for the pizza line with a duck running towards it. And it, as I mentioned, is still the most popular and viewed video on our account. Okay, we also changed the pizza time as there was a timing conflict with the athletics banquet. A large portion of our students are athletes, so we wanted to make sure that they could also participate in our event. And we decided this time to remove the week-long programming and snacks so that we could focus on one night and reallocate our resources all to the one day. There were also other campus events that were continuing to grow and expand during this time, so it didn't feel like we were leaving students in the lurch. For this one, we had student workers at a table as folks were entering, and they provided us with an estimated count of attendees for the event. So we estimate that at about 314.
All right, and then moving on to fall 2024, we were finally back in the library, which was amazing. It definitely made running this event much smoother. And there were some perks to being back in our building, right? So Mary and I finally had offices that were very front and center. Students could come find us more easily. We also had classrooms that we could use for different events or different purposes. And perhaps the best thing for students, or the things they were most excited about, we had reservable study rooms for either single use or small groups. And those were very popular during the event. We also changed how we serve food a little bit. So on the first floor of the library, we have a coffee bar area with a counter and a table. And we use this as sort of a buffet area for serving food, which worked much better. However, by that area, we also had an unfinished archives that was still being worked on. So there was a giant hole in the wall, which we ended up covering with a new addition to Night Against Procrastination, which was crepes. Those ended up being really popular. The director of our global experience office is the one who makes those, and he sees it as a great way to connect with students and practice his own humanized outreach. He even brings his daughter, which makes him seem like much more of an approachable human because she is very cute and very funny. She has a lot to say. Mary and I also launched window displays for our offices. So as you can maybe get an idea of from the slide, the theme for this night against procrastination was Candyland. So we built a giant Candyland board across the windows of our offices. And we found this is a good way to kind of draw students in. We had some information about evaluating sources as part of that window display. So it made students ask us questions and just spend more time by our offices seeing what was going on, which was a great way to make connections. We also contacted the athletics department to make sure we weren't scheduling over any of their events. And this helped us continue to build on some relationships that we had already established with that department. And it also just kind of showed them that we're interested in serving student athletes more and welcoming them into the building. And I think we did have a surplus of, or a greater number of student athletes that semester. We even had people in like cheese heads watching football off in a study room. So that was a great connection we were able to make. Also working within some of those connections and collaborations we had already made. We had pre-nap therapy dogs that were brought to us by SEAL, which is our student engagement and leadership group on campus. So we had already connected with one of the students who was in charge of SEAL. And because of that connection, they felt comfortable bringing this idea to us of having therapy dogs in the library. And then building off that connection later, we were able to do some book displays and other things with that same student and some of the other orgs they were part of. We did stop offering buttons. We used to offer like one-time only special edition buttons for every nap, but it just didn't work with our schedules, and our time leading up to this nap was very busy. So we decided to leave that out, and it was totally fine. People did not mind. And then finally, based on some feedback and some assessment we had done from previous semesters, we decided to expand our activity table into an activity room that had, coloring sheets and puzzles and things like that. And we'll talk more about how that went in the next slide. And for this event, we had a people counter in our building. So we counted 351 total entries, and we think that's fairly accurate to the number of people who showed up to the event, because we found that more people were entering the building and staying for longer into the event instead of just coming in, grabbing some food and leaving.
Okay, and now we're at the spring 2025, or the most recent NAP. So we realized that the fidgets didn't go super quickly in the previous semester, so we asked our sponsor, who usually does that, to pivot to doing giveaway prizes so that we could get more feedback for assessment from our students, and it did lead to an increase. We also removed the sensory room completely because it was taking up a study room once we moved back, and we found that students actually really just wanted the space that they could book themselves. We also reintroduced a take a fidget table, but we moved it out into the open right when you walk in or enter the main entrance of our building. It was right when you come in, so students could grab them right away. They did go really fast. We also changed the timing of the food. In previous semesters, we had snacks all throughout the day until they ran out. But since students were usually a little hungry before crepes and pizza, they went really, really fast. So we actually moved them after crepes and pizza, and they were a little bit more spaced out through the rest of the night. We also had fewer staff available to help us this semester. There was just some scheduling conflicts and other commitments that they had. So we had to be really intentional about how we were allocating our staff and putting them where they were needed the most. We still ran into some scheduling conflicts this semester. Instead of offering it on the study day, that day in between classes and finals, like we usually do, there was a local history event being hosted in the library on that day. So we moved it to the last day of classes instead. That did mean that it overlapped with one of our night classes, but students were able to come after because the event went so late. There was also a student-run concert just outside of the library, which we were a little worried about, but we actually think helped increase attendance as students were looking for things to do after attending the concert. We also realized as we were getting used to the building that we didn't quite know how the HVAC system was working. So for the fall of 24 NAP, it was a little toasty, especially in the study rooms, and students gave us feedback on that. So we reached out to facilities and made sure to lower the temperature of the whole building, which did help a lot. We also had a new archivist start during this semester, and she created a little bit on the fly a Beloit College history trivia game, and students could answer history questions related to the college in order to win little turtle figurines as prizes. She had received them as donations from other campus units, and she was looking to rehome some of them, so it worked out very well. And then instead of taking over our classroom like we did in the previous semester for an activity room, we realized that students didn't really use it for the activity room and again just wanted space to do their own work. So we went back to an activity table, which we do have throughout the entire year. Just 2 tables covered with crafts and other de-stress activities. For this one, again, we had the gate counts and we had 455 total entries, so a definite increase from the semester before.
All right, so hopefully through that case study of NAP, you can start to get an idea of how we're putting this humanized outreach into practice, at least with this specific event. However, I am going to outline a few more concrete examples to really illustrate how we are putting this into practice. All right, and it will be based on those 3 sort of ideas we pulled out earlier. So first, finding touch points. As Mary mentioned, our new archivist this past semester found a really brilliant way to connect with students that was kind of on the fly, but had great results. So she developed this history trivia quiz. Students got a turtle if they answered a question right. There's kind of varying levels of difficulty of question. And, partially the archivist did this just to offer students something to do between crepes and pizza if they didn't want to settle into study yet. But she partially also did it to make some connections with students, right? She's new to campus. She's trying to find those touch points herself. And it worked really well. Students were so excited to get these turtles. They were coming up to, I think, every member of the library staff who was there to show off the turtle that they won. They're like, ooh, I got this turtle. It has like a hat on. So they were just really proud and really excited that they had answered this question right. They had won a turtle. And it created all these amazing touch points for all the library staff, which was really great. Another really important touch point that we've found with Night Against Procrastination is social media. Again, as Mary mentioned before, our most popular post that we've ever put out there was a video of a silly little duck running around on top of a picture of our pizza line, which we did not expect to do super well, and then it really took off. But it was created by one of our student workers who we kind of said, do what you want, right? Find some ways to promote this event. It's really up to you. And because they had a good idea of what would resonate with other students and what was trending at the time, they came up with this duck video idea, and it was a huge touch point for students. We ended up getting an influx of students into Night Against Procrastination about 10 minutes after that video was posted. So we have a feeling that was a big draw to the event that year. All right, so our second point we have here, humanizing our practice. There are a few ways we do this during Night Against Procrastination, but one of the major ways is focusing on what we can do and what we enjoy doing. So again, I just want to stress this idea of thinking about what you are capable of, the resources you have, what your department can handle. And that's something that Mary and I really try to be aware of as we're planning. So an example of that, we found that students weren't super interested in research appointments during Night Against Procrastination. They didn't necessarily want a structured sit down with us. However, when we walked around the building, they were really excited to see us and really excited to just have a chat with us. And sometimes that evolved into asking a research question or a question about the assignment they were working on. And honestly, we enjoy walking around a lot more than just sitting in our offices during the event. So we leaned into what we were interested in and what we like doing, and we ended up seeing better results and more connections with students that way. All right, and finally, the assessment piece, right? We want to be sensitive to what students are thinking, what they're enjoying, and we want to make sure we're creating change based on that feedback. So one way we found to encourage feedback from students was through giveaways. And I think this is really crucial, giveaways of things that we knew students were interested in because they had shown interest in them before. So we did a Lego set that was a turtle, we did some squishmallows, we did a Roku, and these were all things that, you know, we knew were popular with students, we knew that they would be interested in, and we did see an uptick in the number of feedback forms that were filled out, which is great. And then we've highlighted many ways that we created change based on this, based on this feedback. But I do want to highlight that it doesn't have to be big change, and it wasn't always big change. Sometimes it was something as simple as we're just not going to do buttons anymore, or we're going to change the location of this activity. And even that helped the event be more successful.
Okay, we have some photos for you to help you picture a little bit about what NAP looks like for us. So on the left side of the screen, the two pictures on the left are from our temporary space in the powerhouse. So the top left corner is students enjoying pizza, snacks, and our famous custom cake we get every year. The bottom left corner is the pizza line, students queuing while they waited for the pizza to arrive. Now, it's a little bit hard to tell, but right above the line is that gym equipment that Tristan mentioned earlier. So again, just showing you the space that we were working with for this event. The rest of the photos, aside from the Polaroid, are from our newly renovated space. So the top left, second from the left, the top row is our crepe line that was hiding our archives hole in the wall. And then to the right of that is our library mascot, Torty. And Torty answered a Beloit College history trivia question correctly and got to pick out a turtle from the box. And then the top right corner is just a selfie with us and some of our collaborators and other staff. And then moving down to the bottom row, this set of middle photos here is Tristan and I serving pizza, again, with some of our amazing coworkers. And then but below that is a picture of the pizza as it was set up before the students got to it. And this is so that we could show you what the coffee bar situation looks like that we mentioned earlier. Now, this Polaroid was our very first nap together, so it's a little bit of a special photo. And this is some of our LITS team in addition to the library mascot, Torty.
All right, so now that we've talked you through that case study, we've shown you how we used humanized outreach for this specific event. We want to leave you with a few things to think about, a few tips and tricks to help you use this in your own practice. So to start off, we recommend doing a vibe check. So this is kind of an assessment just to start off right off the bat. So you might want to start with thinking about what is working for you and what is not working for you, but also what's working in your library or on your campus and what's not working. Okay, so it can be both personal and more broad. We also suggest that you think about what you enjoy doing as part of this, what is working and what isn't. So again, we really want to highlight that the things that we have found to be most successful are the things that we really enjoy. And I think students can really tell when we're excited about something and we're eager to do something versus when we're like, oh, we don't really love this, but we'll do it. They get a lot more excited when we're excited, basically. Another important thing to think about is who is your community? And this could be very narrow. It could be within your library or within your department. It could be who can you connect with, who supports you on your campus. But we also encourage you to look even broader as well. So are there other librarians or library professionals who are doing similar work to you? Are there people who are doing things that you're really excited about and you want to learn more about? I think one of the great things about working in libraries is people love sharing their ideas. So definitely reach out if you see someone who's doing something exciting. Any support you can have is great. Another important thing to think about is, what is your budget? Do you have flexibility in that budget? Are there other areas of support if you don't have a lot of room in your budget that you can tap into on campus? And then finally, and this is a very important piece, so I really want to highlight it. Are you in an environment where you can safely make changes? So a lot of what we're saying might feel very personal or uncomfortable, or you might not feel safe to do some of these things in your current environment. And that's okay, right? You should always prioritize your safety and your job security. And maybe just think about smaller ways that you can make changes that feel more comfortable or more safe to you, right? Maybe just wearing some silly earrings instead of trying to totally change an event.
Okay, so now we'll talk about some ways that you can get started if you've done your vibe check and you want to try to do some of this work. So first is to evaluate your current time. What tasks do you absolutely have to do? When do they need to be done by? And where do you have wiggle room, if any? Our second point is try to connect with someone. As Tristan mentioned, this could be someone on your own team or on your campus, but it doesn't have to be. As two librarians on a very small campus, we are lucky that we work really well together, but we know that there's a much larger library and higher education world that we can tap into, and we do so even though we work well and collaborate well together. So you can find someone outside of your library that can give you some of that support. And then you may consider, as Tristan mentioned, changing something small. This could be something as simple as your earrings or a print that you have up in your office. But maybe you want to consider thinking about something that you hate or something that's maybe your least favorite part of your job and seeing if you can at least adjust it in a minor way that makes it feel a little bit less overwhelming or a little bit more a little bit more enjoyable for you in your practice. And then finally, you want to make sure you're following the data and that you're prepared to justify your planning or your changes or your choices. Now, when we say follow the data, we don't mean, oh, this event had 100 people attend, and so that is what we're going to do always. Sometimes it's important to be able to explain and justify the high impact practices in the choices we're making, even if the numbers are comparatively small. So just practicing and being prepared to have those conversations can help you a lot in advocating for the changes that you'd like to make.
Okay. And then some next steps you can try out. Um, One of the most important ones, and we're going to highlight this because Mary and I aren't always the best at it, is to be realistic, right? So, what can you realistically handle within your schedule and your workload? But also just recognizing that change can take time. And sometimes there can be a lot of tension when change is happening, right? So, just trying to be patient, but also setting realistic expectations can be very helpful if you're trying to make some changes within your practice. We also advocate for just trying something, right? And this is something I tell students all the time, but it's much easier to tell someone than to do it yourself. So even if it's something small, just make a little change. Put a sticker on your laptop if you're allowed to by your IT department. um, Bring your water bottle that has some fun stickers on it. Wear some earrings, wear a pin, just find some small ways that you can maybe bring some of your interests into your workplace. It's also important to continue building connections, whether that's making new ones or just nourishing the connections that you already have. It's important for you and your well-being, but also for having more support for the work that you're doing. It's also important to assess. I feel like we said it a lot, and it doesn't always feel the most exciting to do assessment, but we think there are even ways you can make assessment more humanized and more interesting, whether that's relying more on conversations or finding maybe some non-traditional ways to do assessment. And then finally, falling into that idea of assessment, just check in with yourself, right? What is or isn't working for you? What are you excited about? Again, students are smart. They can really tell if something's going on, if you're not excited about something. And we're not saying, fake it till you make it. We're just saying maybe check in, see what's working, what's not, and what you might be able to change.
Okay, that is everything we have for you. Feel free to throw some questions in the chat, and I'm also just going to go over how you can connect with us if you'd like to talk after. So if you can't tell, we are big yappers and we love to yap with new folks. We'd love to hear about what you're doing in your own practice, or if you have questions or you're thinking about trying something, please let us know. So you can email either of us. Our emails are in the center of the screen on this slide here. We also, as I mentioned a little earlier, recently started a podcast together called Librarians Spill the Tea. It is available for free on Substack, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And you can also follow our library's socials on TikTok and Instagram. It's the same handle, and that's at Beloit Lit. Okay, so we do have a question in the chat, Tristan. I will read it off. So, any tips on advocating for the budget for these events with admin, especially with a limited institutional budget? Yes. I think it depends a little bit on historically where you're coming from and what your overall goals are. So, a few pieces, and then Tristan jump in whenever. But one, are you planning to try to jump into a giant event like we have right away? Maybe reconsider an intermediate step that would be a smaller budget and a smaller scale so that you can have increased data, student assessment and feedback, staff engagement or happiness. Maybe a smaller event has led to increased engagement, not only in the library, but also in other areas on campus. So that might be your first step. Now, if you already have some of that data, you've already tried some successful events, and you do want to try something bigger like this, again, I would try to break it into steps. So if you are, I think you first need to get staff that are similar to you in other departments on board, right? You need to understand where they're coming from, what their goals for a session like this could be. And then you can work together to talk about how this would impact student experience, student retention, anything tied to the overall student improvement, I think is often a really impactful way to have these conversations with administration. There is plenty of library professionals doing work tied to how libraries can have positive impacts on student improvement, all the way from their own experience and ideas of success through some harder number things. So having an idea on what kind of information or data might be the most convincing for your administration would be a good place to start there as well. And also reach out. There are other folks doing this kind of work, and we only could fit so much in this talk, but we have to have these kinds of conversations too. So there are other people doing this work that can help talk you through some of the ways that they've approached their own administration, whether that's within their team or broader on campus.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I would just highlight again what Mary is saying. Connecting out to campus has been a really great way for us to show that the work we're doing is impactful and is engaging students, right? And just to give an example, so in one of the feedback forms we got from a student, I don't know, maybe last spring, they said that going to Night Against Procrastination bumped up their grade by a whole letter. And that was a story that we took out to campus as we were seeking sponsorships, but also something that we took back, to our library director, among other things, when we were asking for a little more programming budget. And even just having a story like that really helped us get a little more budget, because I think, again, it just kind of humanized what what the event was and the impact it was having, across campus more broadly.
And then I want to highlight something that Gregory shared in the chat tied to this question. It's not only about student improvement, but you can also bundle in the staff team building facet, which is a win-win and a pretty good bang for your buck. So thank you for sharing that. Our next question is one thing we do. So they take advantage of a large captive audience in the student workforce. They've inspired a lot of change and innovation and valuable feedback. Do we have a large student worker population, and do we use them to help us advocate? And then does this spread to the IT student workers? And Tristan, I'll let you start on that answer.
Yeah, so I would say we do have a fairly large student worker population. So student workers are really the front-facing people in the library, the front-facing staff. So we usually have about, I want to say 25 to 30 student workers who work at the circulation desk. And, sometimes they're here on their own, especially on evenings and weekends. So they see a lot of what happens in the library, and they are able to help us direct change through their observations, but also, by thinking about what questions they're getting and what their other fellow student workers are kind of struggling with in their job. IT also has a fair number of student workers who, again, kind of act as that front-facing staff. They staff the IT help desk, downstairs on the first floor. So because our students are seeing a lot of these like frontline questions, and they're spending a lot of time walking around the library and seeing how the space is being used, they do bring us some really valuable feedback. One example, we had a student who I think was a little fed up of people asking where the bathrooms were after the library was renovated. So they went ahead and designed a bathroom sign that had our turtle mascot on it to help people better find the bathrooms. And I know that seems kind of silly and small, but it did really help. And it's something they just took initiative on and did on their own, and we really appreciated it. But we've also had students who have kind of spread the word out to campus too, which has really helped us. They've brought their friends into the library because their friends want to see them and talk to them during their shift. Or they've even, like, not even knowing they're doing it, advocated for the librarians in their classes and encouraged their classmates to come do research appointments with us. So honestly, now that I'm saying this, maybe it's less us using them to advocate and more just they really believe, I think, in what we're doing, and they really like what we're doing. And so they kind of just go out and advocate on their own, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I will just add that we don't ask our student workers to do this, and we don't ask our students who are not working for us to do this, but we do often ask them for feedback or ideas, and then they can watch those feedback and ideas actually be implemented in our practice. Whether that's something small like we need a new bathroom sign. And we'll go talk to that student and be like, that looks amazing. I'm so glad you thought to do that. Thank you for your work. But even students that have had research appointments, whether they work for us or not, will bring in their friends to come say hi quick, update us on their assignment, and then, oh, their friend also needed help. Do you have time? Right. So we work really hard to humanize our practice so that these connections can kind of start building themselves, starting in the library and then expanding, not just through our student worker base, although they are amazing and help us a lot.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. That was a fantastic presentation. We really enjoyed it, and I got really interested in a lot of these ideas. And they are big probably for us to do, but like you said, break it down into steps and just kind of start showing the impact, and then maybe go bigger later on. Yeah, so that's a helpful tip. Yes, thank you so much for being here. Are there any other? I don't see any other questions in the chat. It looks like everybody's just saying thank you and how inspired they are. But yeah, thank you for your energy and for sharing such interesting ideas for us to try. It's nice to see other, we're part of the college library section, so other institutions that are not huge research institutions and what we can do with what we have. So it's awesome. Thank you for coming. Those of us that are, if you want to stay for the business meeting, that's up next. So this is the executive committee. We meet once a month. If they want to get involved with CLS, please do. And you can be part of that. But if you want to stay and see what the meetings are like, feel free. And if you need to leave, that's fine. We appreciate the time you spent with us. So thank you so much. All right, take care. I'm going to go ahead and put the agenda in the chat so we can kind of see what we're talking about today. Just some quick check-ins from everybody to see where we're at with everything. Okay. All right. Shouldn't take too long. Let's see. And do we have... And Melissa's here. Okay, we'll just go ahead and launch right into the meeting. But the agenda, like I said, is in the chat. We'll start with our May minutes. Are there any concerns, feedback, questions about the minutes? Did everybody have a chance to look those over? Okay, great. So can we get somebody to make a motion to approve the
I
minutes?
move that we
My brain is falling.
approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, can we get a second?
I second.
Thank you. Okay, so those are approved, our May minutes. We're just gonna go through here. I'm not sure. I think Elizabeth is here. Let's see here. She was gonna. Oh, there you are, Elizabeth. If you want to introduce yourself and tell us how you're going to be involved as part of the Oberlin group.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Leonard. I'm the Director of University Libraries and Special Collections at Drew University. We were invited to be a liaison to CLS and kind of feeling it out, trying to figure out if there's some common overlap and where this might work. So we're here for a couple months to kind of, get the lay of the land. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, great. Thank you for being here. And hopefully this will be something we can continue and we'll see how it all works out. Okay. And then now we have, is Shauna here for the CIC liaison update? Let's see if she's here. She may not have been able to make it. Okay, so we'll go next to award committee updates with Kathleen.
So we submitted the awards with the changes that the bigger ACRL award committee wanted us to make, and we've gotten approved. We have to make one minor change. I guess we can't use writing as a rubric piece. So quality of writing is not allowed to be a piece. So we just need to resubmit that. Then I want you to put this in the minutes. I want to thank all the committee members. We worked really hard to get this award back up and running. And so we're excited to see it actually in practice next year.
You know what I'm going to do? I think, should I stop the recording at this point? Since people will be watching more for the presentation. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Didn't realize that. So is that going to mess you up, Melissa, if we